Hello YouTube, how are you doing? Once again, thank you for coming to Mesoamerica, your place for Mesoamerican culture, magic, and religion. Today I want to speak to you about the Spanish conquistador and Catholic Church efforts, very successful efforts, to try to eradicate the pre-Columbian gods and replace them with saints and virgins. The Spanish conquistadors and the settlers, they were very effective at trying to get rid of these pre-Columbian gods, and which was of great damage, not only for the physical lives of the natives, but also for the psychological and spiritual lives. One of the clearest examples that we have of these cultural eradication is the pyramid of Cholula, where we see a chapel built on top of a pyramid. I know that a lot of academics really shy away from this topic, particularly because it's very hard to equate one with the other. But I believe that there's a lot of value in trying to explore this topic, and this is what this video is all about. Thank you very much for joining me, and let's go. Now, the spiritual connection that the natives of this continent had with their gods was intrinsic. It was part of their DNA. It was part of their everyday, every hour, every second existence. Because that is how they were able to connect the meaning of reality to every day, to everything. They equated, for example, the rain with the god Tlaloc. They equated the rising of the sun with the victories of Huitzilopochtli, and the setting of the suns with the partial defeat of Huitzilopochtli and the rise of Tezcatlipoca. The elements of nature were intrinsically tied to the way they perceived nature. They were the way they perceived their religion, if you want to call it that. I don't really want to call it religion because this was more attached to nature and to archetypes, and they were not instructed very much on what was it that the gods actually said. There were no sermons every Sunday like in the Catholic Church or in any other, in most churches today. And so I don't know if I want to call it religion, but the spiritual genocide that happened for the native people was brutal. There was a phrase that they used to say back then. They used to say "conversión o muerte," which translates to conversion or death, which meant that it was very important for the Catholic Church and for the Spanish powers that be for people to convert to their religion. To this very day, we still are finding bodies of children that refused or were unable to convert, and as a result were disposed of or exterminated by people not too long ago, 100 years, 50 years ago. The importance of somehow cultural assimilation was very important for the Spanish, and is very important today for, like, Catholic churches in Canada, certain churches here in the United States. And overall, people need to be controlled, kind of like a pet, or like a wild animal. If the animal is still wild, it's not useful for the owner, and so therefore, if it cannot be domesticated, it needs to be exterminated in their view. The one way in which the Spanish were able to convert people was to replace their saints or their virgins with a particular god. Now, this was not a one-to-one conversion, and humans are very unpredictable, and it also came as a matter of need, not as a matter of equations, and that is why academics have a very difficult time of trying to prove this, not only in Mexico, but also all over Europe. Europe is filled with gods like Demeter and Zeus, and so they are, in Greece and in Italy, they have also tried to somehow replace one god for another saint or virgin or Jesus or whatever. And so therefore it is very difficult to prove. But one thing that the Spanish noticed really early on was that the natives were very devout to their gods. They will do anything for their gods, and their reality was revolved around their gods. And the Spanish did not really want to get rid of this. This was a very useful tool. Then this is indicative also about that they did not do this out of real divine belief, but they did this out of purpose. They did this on purpose to try to exploit the people. And so they were able to tap into the devotion of the native people and transform that devotion into terms that they could potentially use, and that they in fact use them very well. There are many different stories that are told to this very day about miracles that somehow happened, about people that came into the church remorseful. A lot of these people are criminals. They came into the church remorseful, trying to beg for absolution. And the priest, of course, manipulated this particular criminal or this particular person who thought they did something wrong or did in fact did something wrong. And they manipulated them into some type of absolution, and the miracle of absolution happened, and this person got reformed for a little bit, in a way, most of the time in these stories. But we cannot help but think that this is imaginary. All of this absolution, all of these promises of hell, all of these promises of heaven, they're all imaginary. No one really quite knows whether these things actually exist. We cannot prove them. But what we can in fact prove was the social and the cultural changes that happened within the people. The gods of the pre-Columbian people were archetypal gods of real natural effects. Whether these gods were actually real or not, that is a matter for debate. But what we do know is that the sun rises, the sun sets, there is rain, there is death, there is rebirth, there is transformation. And these gods do in fact represent these natural events. As to whether we want to perceive them as natural deities, that is, to the interpretation of the native people, and therefore our own interpretation. Or whether we want to believe that there is an invisible God up there that somehow controls our lives and heaven and hell, that is a little bit more hard to believe, in my opinion. Particularly because it's very difficult to prove. And so the Catholic Church did a very good job at purging the idea that there were deities associated with those natural events, and piled them all up into, well, leave it to God type of thing, where the sun rises because of God, rain happens because of God, and so they control God, they control Jesus. There is a white Jesus up there in that pedestal or on that wall. Beautiful church built with the hard, free, or should we say slave labor of the natives. And there was a great deal of manipulation and, of course, empty promises. Now, how did the Spanish choose which god they were going to replace with which virgin and saint? These obviously happened out of necessity. The Spanish liked the fact that they were able to exterminate, oppress, and just abuse the native population, but they were useful. Like I said, they built their churches, they built their buildings, they maintained irrigation, they maintained their homes. They were a very free source of labor, very valuable, kind of like an animal. And as a result, they needed to maintain that animal in line. If the animal was not able to be domesticated or was not able to be useful, therefore it was exterminated. But if the animal was able to be domesticated and proved to be useful, then therefore that animal got to preserve. And here we are. We are the animals that were able to be domesticated, or at least part of my family. And as a result, this type of domestication came from a adaptation of beliefs and adaptation of spiritual beliefs. For example, there were many people that believed in Quetzalcoatl because that is their patron god based on their either birthday or the place where they're from. Like I said, the Pyramid of Cholula was dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, and that was their patron god for Cholula. And so the people that lived there, they were very devout of Quetzalcoatl over all their gods. And as a result, the Spanish tried to transform that devotion of Quetzalcoatl to, like the Virgin of Immaculate Conception in this case. And so they tried to maintain a very similar type of thinking as well. And that meant as far as like, when are they going to celebrate festivals? So they tried to do something similar, but not quite the same, on a slightly different dates. To try to maintain the cultural tradition of the people, but transformed now into Catholic and useful terms. These not only happened in Cholula, it happened also in Mexico City, not as much. Quetzalcoatl was not very much worshipped by the Aztecs. It was, but there were bigger gods like Huitzilopochtli and Tezcatlipoca and Xipe-Tutek. And therefore, it also, this Quetzalcoatl was transformed into either Jesus or San Judas Tadeo. We can notice these type of changes basically based on where were their temples. Not only where were their temples, but also by the dates of the celebrations, the nature of the celebrations, the nature of the god, and also by the colors. Colors were very important for the people from Mesoamerica. Quetzalcoatl, for example, was very much identified by the color green and the color red. So we see in San Judas Tadeo, he carries like a tunic that is green. Some images of Jesus in places where there were temples of Quetzalcoatl, they depict him as some wearing some type of green or wearing some type of red. And this was easier for the native population for them to be assimilated into a particular Catholic belief. Now, and this is not only limited itself to Quetzalcoatl. It goes on to take upon many other different gods. Like, for example, Tezcatlipoca, like I said, was worshipped by the Aztecs, and we have the Church of the Christ, the Jesus del Veneno, the Jesus of poison. And so this Jesus del Veneno is black. His whole skin is black, and to this day, the Catholic priests that are over this particular church cannot really quite explain why did he turn black. There are many legends, but the fact is that it was very much likely because he was built in around the temple of Tezcatlipoca, and it was to be able to let people know that this Jesus of Veneno, of poison, now has taken the place of Tezcatlipoca. There are other ones all over the whole country. I'm pretty sure in Guatemala it's very similar. I haven't been that much in Guatemala, but I'm pretty sure it's the same. We have also Virgin of Guadalupe, who was her church was built on where was the altars and the place of devotion for Tonantzin. And this is not only limited to Mexico City, it expands to other places in around Mexico City and around the country. But the gods are a little bit different. For example, Quetzalcoatl in the Maya region becomes Kukulkan or Gucumax. For the Mazatecs, it's another god. And so it's not necessarily a different god, but we know a lot of the similarities. For example, Quetzalcoatl, he was known as the morning star. Jesus is known as the morning star. So it's kind of like you can kind of equate one with the other. And also, Quetzalcoatl is known for transversing through the unseen worlds. We can consider them kind of like heaven and hell. But they're not heaven and hell. They're just kind of like unseen worlds where multiple different spirits reside. Spirits were very important for the people from Mesoamerica. Mushrooms had spirits, plants had spirits, humans, animals had spirits. And so Quetzalcoatl was kind of the god that was able to travel through these worlds, bring life to death and death to life, and was able to witness it. Jesus very much did the same thing after he was crucified. according to the Christian canon. He went to hell, saved some people, opened the gates of hell, and then he went to heaven, and then he returned to his apostles and taught them. The stories are very similar, and so therefore it was not very difficult for the Spanish to equate Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan or Cucumax to Jesus. Now, why is this important? Why today do we care? It is important because to this very day, there are many cultural aspects of not only Mexicans, but worldwide people's view of Mexicans that are somehow derogatory. In fact, we have a guy saying that Mexicans are, killers and rapists, and they don't send their best or whatever. And these type of derogatory terminology comes from the aspects of Spanish oppression, because it is within our DNA sometimes to put ourselves down, and that we're only able to have any value because of what the church puts a value on us, or we're able somehow to assess our value based on their judgment and the judgment of others. The value of human beings is intrinsic to we're all created equal. Regardless of nationality, regardless of skin color, we are all valuable. And whether there's a divine deity or not, it does not matter. We're all human beings. We all have the ability to think, the ability to develop. And the fact that there have been 500 years of oppression should not be used as an excuse or as a deterrent for us to put ourselves down. And understanding our place as our ancestors saw it, I think, is of great value. For us to be able to understand the archetypes of nature and the universe and of time as they saw them, it is of great value. Not only because it enriches us, Mexicans or natives culturally, but it also because it gives us a greater understanding of the universe and our place within it. And we do not have to be dependent upon the judgment or upon the institution of the Catholic Church. We are free. We need to know that we're free. We need to know that we're valuable. And this is my message for today. Thank you very much and have a great one. Bye-bye.